So next up, if we're ready, we've got Brent Blazek from Jam City with the talk "Reignite Your Strategy: A Practical Guide for Setting Up Mature Games for Renewed Growth."
Okay, thank you, everybody. So I hope you're all having a good conference so far. I know that I found a lot of amazing tips and tactics so far in the first day, and I'm sure there will be tons today as well. I'm also confident that if you take all your notes from this conference home to your team, it's going to be more than you could possibly do in your current roadmap. And if you add everything that you already knew you needed to do and all the ideas the rest of your team has, it's probably more than you can do in an entire lifetime. So I'm, in this talk, not going to add another tactic onto that pile. I'm going to try to add a little bit to an approach you can take with your strategy that's helped me, specifically with the dilemma of mature titles looking for new growth. So some context setting. Looking at the market today, what I found is that of the top mobile publishers, 50 mobile publishers, 58% of them have the same top title as 5 years ago. 96% of them have that top title still somewhere in their top 5. So the titles now that you have today are overwhelmingly likely to be crucial to your business in 5 years. However, as we know, 2022 was difficult for the overall gaming market, but the gaming market is now increasing again. However, looking year over year at revenue, only 21% of mobile games seem to have been able to increase revenue year over year. So it's overwhelmingly likely that your titles now are going to be crucial to your business for 5 years, but it's also overwhelmingly unlikely that without a specific sound strategy that exceeds the market, that you're actually going to increase revenue of those titles year over year. So a little bit about me. I've been in the game industry for a while. I was previously at King and now joined Jam City about 15 months ago. I've worked in products in all stages of life cycle, but for the last 5 to 6 years, I've been specializing in growing mature titles that have already reached sort of an equilibrium or even managed decline that we then want to accelerate into growth. At Jam City, I joined taking over the puzzle division, where I manage 12 titles, the largest of which is Cookie Jam. And we've managed now in Cookie Jam to be part of that 21%, increasing revenue 10% year over year. And prior to that at King, we're also able to accomplish this on several titles, namely when I was the head of product for Candy Crush Soda. So taking you back to sort of an insight that I had about 5 years ago, we were a new leadership team on a title, and we knew the title was in a rough state. It had already been live and was declining. And we were dealing with this unique problem of trying to set a new vision. So we had an offsite, and we were excited, and we were a new group of people, and we thought we were going to go there and really figure out the next 5 years. But the room was more or less empty for more or less the whole day. And the reason is that we woke up that morning to a massive alerts that the game was crashing, people couldn't pay in the game, we were bleeding money, so we had to deal with that problem. And I had this moment of clarity of the absurdity of that as I looked out at the beautiful Swedish archipelago and thought about all the money our company was spending on this vision workshop, and we couldn't even talk about what our vision should be because the game wasn't even live. So looking at the concept of vision specifically for a mature title, we know it's critical for growth to have a new vision that's taking you somewhere in 5 years, but we also know it's very difficult to prioritize. Dealing with this problem, I drew inspiration from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is, for those unfamiliar, a psychological concept. I was familiar with this from like leadership training, things like that. Very briefly, if you're not familiar, it's one of the underpinnings, I believe, of psychological safety. It's essentially saying that you want to get somewhere of being the best person you can possibly be, but there's no way you can be motivated if certain requirements are not met. So you can imagine if you're talking to someone about taking on new leadership roles, but they literally don't have food. That's an absurd discussion to have, right? So this is very interesting from a leadership perspective, leading individuals. But the insight that I had is that it's also very interesting looking at this lens as an organization, not the individuals, but the organization itself. So you need to define what a vision is for you, but let's say generically for a game, it's something like you want breakthrough player experience. You want breakthrough marketing. But you can't do that, and one of the reasons why you might not even be able to prioritize talking about it is that your company is dependent on your game hitting its quarterly targets, and you don't know if your roadmap is going to do that. So a healthy pace of delivery is necessary for unlocking the investments in the vision. How are you going to take a big swing if you feel insecure about the core business? And by deliver also, just to note, I mean impact. Like maybe you're delivering a lot of stuff, but is it actually having the effect that you need? Okay, so you're going to do that. You say, great, we'll set up Q4, we'll figure that out, then we can focus on our vision. But then you find maybe you can't do that because your game is not optimized. Many people might think this is backwards. They think, well, you deliver something and then you optimize it. But if you've been working in a mature title for a while, you've probably run into the problem of taking on a bet that you thought was secure. Maybe you went to a conference and heard about a market example. There was a surefire bet, and it didn't have the effect that you thought it would. And it might be because your game is just out of control. Your economy is out of control, or there's something about your game that's different than the market examples, and you don't have a baseline that you can actually build on. So how are you going to even prioritize setting your Q4 roadmap if you don't have a level of confidence that your bets are going to do what they need to do? Okay, so you think, great, we'll optimize, but oh gosh, we can't even prioritize that, or maybe even prioritize the discussion about it, because we don't even know what to optimize. So I call this level robust operations. Do you have a clear understanding of the player experience in the first place? Do you have the tools to make those assessments? And then do you also have the tools to affect change if you need to? So even if you know what to do, is it just as big of a roadmap item to make those changes as a huge player-facing bet? So do you have robust operations? If you don't, how are you going to optimize the game if you don't even know what to optimize in the first place? Do you, on the marketing side, even understand your KPIs, your return on investment? Do you truly understand the fundamentals of why something has an effect that it does? Okay, robust operations, cool. That must be the bottom. No, maybe your game's not even live. And here, I'll make the point, you shouldn't think of these just as binary deliverables, like you're either delivering things or you're not. Your game is either live or it's not. The point of this model is to think about your satisfaction requirements. So going back to the original hierarchy of needs for an individual, you don't need to live in a mansion before you can focus on being really successful in your career. It just can't be a problem for you. Same thing here. Is the game live enough? Meaning, are your crash rates way higher than you think they should be, which is prohibiting you from ever prioritizing anything above it, because why would you ever do anything except fix this fundamental problem? Likewise, you should think about satisfaction requirements as not doing more than is necessary for the satisfaction requirement. You might have an idea that your game should have the lowest crash rate of any game in the history of games. That's awesome, but that goal is probably not, the absence of that goal is probably not preventing you from doing the rest of the hierarchy. So going back to the Swedish archipelago, this is where we were. We thought we were there to talk about a new vision, but we fundamentally couldn't focus on anything except for the live game. Now, this didn't happen all the time. This was a pretty unique problem. But over time, what we discovered was that it was very difficult to prioritize the vision. It was difficult to prioritize deciding what to do, and it was difficult to prioritize making the investment necessary to get there. And over time, in hindsight, once we actually did achieve growth and reflected on how we got there and what changed, not just in the game, but in our strategy and our mindset, this is one of the big conclusions I think we came to, or that I personally came to, is that we need to work through this hierarchy in order to unlock investment. So this is where you want to get. This is an abstract concept. I'll try to help you with like concretely applying it. So one of the first things you're going to do is diagnose and set goals. One of the most important parts of a strategy is the diagnosis. a really fundamental understanding of what you should be doing in the first place and what the effect is going to be. So you can use this to help you with that. This isn't the totality of strategy. This is a narrow sliver in it, but I think it's an interesting sort of perspective specifically for live games. So for each level of the hierarchy, you're going to go through and you're going to diagnose the current state of your game. You're going to be radically honest with yourself and with stakeholders. You're going to involve a lot of people. You're going to be as comprehensive as possible with perspectives and with data. Turn everything over from as many angles as you can. And then once you get to this diagnosis, then you need to decide what good looks like. And you're going to more or less have two sort of ends of a spectrum here. You're going to have the satisfaction requirement. What do you need to do to stop being blocked by this level of hierarchy? But as you're doing this, you're probably also going to have a lot of ambitions. You're going to have a lot of things that come up that would be great. They are good ideas. They're just not relevant to this specific question of, are we being blocked from our vision? But you're going to note them. So you're going to have this overview from the lens of what's really fundamentally important to unlock investment in your already live title. I think this is a different aspect ratio than what it was on my computer. OK, so you're going to take these. You're going to have a set of satisfaction requirements in these different categories. And then you're basically going to prioritize from bottom to top. Now, as you probably all know, in reality, you don't always execute exactly according to prioritization. Maybe you have technical dependencies. You have teams that can work in parallel. But your guiding principle of how you're making prioritization decisions is going to be unlock the top layers by fixing the satisfaction requirements of the bottom layers. OK, so, and remember, these are not the best possible state. You're going to have discussions about, well, what is the best player experience we can possibly achieve? That's a great discussion to have, but you're also going to park those as a separate category, which earlier I called ambitions. So what do you do with them? You have all these things. Well, your ambitions become interesting because the prioritization isn't relevant in the same way because, for example, going back to really the fundamental thing with crash rates, how are you going to refactor the game, let's say, to have the lowest crash rates in the industry if you don't know if you're even going to hit your quarterly targets? That's a big investment. It's not a satisfaction requirement. They go into your vision, is the way you deal with them. It's a vision statement to have the lowest crash rates in the industry. It's a vision statement to have AI making the most optimized space. Then I would also argue that you're going to continuously iterate because you're, oh, geez, this is really bad. You're going to iterate through the hierarchy because as you develop new statements, you're going to have to ask the question, well, what's blocking us? So you'll come up with a new satisfaction requirement for optimization, and then you're going to ask the question, what's blocking us lower in the hierarchy? Then I would argue that you should also exercise ruthless prioritization. Items should either be part of the vision, like they really deserve to be your 5-year North Star, or they satisfy conditions of prior levels. They're necessary for unlocking the next level, or they should be discarded. OK, so then after completing this exercise, you're going to have guiding principles on balancing immediate business needs and your future vision. You're going to have a plan for unlocking investment in your vision. You're going to have a way of communicating the why of these priorities and plans. Sorry, I think morph transitions don't work the same way on the version of PowerPoint that they're running as it does on my computer. And you're going to have coherent actions balancing your immediate business needs and vision investment. And these together are going to be an underpinning, not your whole strategy, not the end-all be-all, but a slice that is specifically relevant to how do you set and prioritize vision while also needing to support your business because you're managing the live title, which is fundamental to your business health. And then also specifically on the why of these priorities, I think many of you who have been working in live titles probably have at some point gotten the feedback from your teams about their dissatisfaction that you're not prioritizing your vision, even though it feels like every decision you're making is relevant and justified. this is a great tool for explaining to your team that we all want to get to the vision. We all have this ambition, and we all need to work as a team to unlock that vision. It's not a discrepancy between the leadership vision and the operational core, but it's something we all need to work on. So, thank you. Any questions? Thanks.
Yeah, we got a question, I think, here? Have we got a microphone?
Well, do you have any concrete examples of executing this to a real product? Because our company is in a really relevant example to your talk. That we have old games, they are doing okay. We want them to be doing much better. And we've been trying these kind of brain trust things for them. But the problem always is that the game team kind of does their own thing. And maybe they don't have an internal motivation to do any of this. So how do you get from A to B in that sense?
Sure. That's an amazing question. And I think it's very fundamental to strategy. It's probably complementary to this and maybe not an aspect of it, I would argue. But okay, so a concrete example is, I think, both in the case of coming into Jam City and the portfolio there, specifically Cookie Jam, which was the largest title I managed, and previously Soda, I think one of the fundamental questions that you probably need to answer, it sounds like in your situation, is whether you actually want to strike at growth. Because one of the realizations we also had, which is in addition to this model, but is also interesting, is that when it really comes down to it, you can, depending on what kind of title it is, you can probably keep a title live with like 5 employees. Like if it's literally just live, like you just need the servers not to blow up, and maybe you need a couple people for some like core content. So then the question I would maybe put to you in your leadership team is, do you fundamentally believe that whatever incremental, let's say, headcount above the absolute minimum is what you want to do? Is it actually going to be a good return on investment versus working on something else? So, in portfolio management, let's say from Jam City, we have a lot of amazing games. They have really good operating margins, but we're really focusing on and prioritizing the top 3. At least in my portfolio, there's several games being prioritized in Jam City, but like Cookie Jam, Panda Pop, and Genies. That was a strategic decision. Like, these are the games that we're going to continue to drive growth from. We believe that they're going to be amazing in 10 years, and we're deciding to focus on those. So when you're talking about motivation, I would say maybe one of the fundamental questions is, do you have a hypothesis with conviction behind it that it's the right thing to do in the first place? I feel like your question is probably another hour talk, but I hope that helps. Yeah.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? We've got time for 1 or 2 more. Quiet bunch in here today. Definitely those parties still have an effect. But cool. All right then. Thanks very much for the talk. Really appreciate it. Give a round of applause.
Thank you very much.